Hey friends, Ash here with Gents, and today I'm coming at you guys with 5 redundant fragrances that you don't need to own. And this is a requested video requested by Sam, so shout out to you, Sam. He actually gave me a couple of different ideas, and this is the first one I'm going to tackle. So the idea here basically is that if you own one of these fragrances, you don't need to own the other one. And it could really go both ways. You'll see what I'm talking about as we get further into the video, so let's jump into this. Now, before I go any further, I do need to let you guys know that if you like these fragrances, if you own each one that I'm going to mention, that's fine. This is just kind of a guide for some people out there so that they don't blind buy something and go, oh, it's too similar to this. I wish I would have known that before I made the purchase. And also, there are lots of fragrances out there that are cheaper versions of another scent, and I'm trying not to concentrate on those fragrances here today. So for example, somebody might say, hey, you like the way Green Irish Tweed smells, but you don't want to spend that amount of money. Get Davidoff Cool Water, or get Cody Aspen, or get Très Nuit by Armani. I'm not going to concentrate on those fragrances here. So just wanted to let you guys know that before we go any further. Okay, first fragrance that I want to talk about today is this one. Valentino UOMO, Born in Roma. And personally, I'm not really a big fan of this fragrance. Some of the fragrances that I mentioned here today as redundant, I do like, and I think that they're nice fragrances. This one, just not a huge fan of. And this one, I think you don't really need to purchase. I think it's redundant because it smells pretty similar to this Invictus by Paco Rabanne, which also has other fragrances out there that smell similar to it. Things like Azzaro Wanted, Rasasi Hawass, and many other fragrances actually. The Paco Rabanne Invictus DNA can be found all across designer fragrances at this point. It's really popular. People like it a lot. It gets compliments. It's attention grabbing. And a lot of the designer houses want in on that cash pie. And that's basically what this is. Valentino UOMO Born in Roma is Valentino trying to get a little bit of that Paco Rabanne Invictus money for themselves. And it's kind of a letdown because the Valentino UOMO line is really good, or was really good, however you want to word that. It did have a similarity to some Dior fragrances, specifically in the Dior Homme line, but still, in general, really well thought of. And then this came out. This one has mineral notes, violet leaf, salt, and ginger as some of the notes in the fragrance. And this one is a really youthful, kind of bubblegummy sweet type of scent. And the reason that I want to bring this one up is because this fragrance is just now starting to get pushed at my local fragrance stores. So Sephora, Ulta, those stores around here, and admittedly my area is behind the times when it comes to getting in new fragrance releases. But anyway, the stores in my area, they're really pushing this. And in my opinion, it's redundant. If you own Invictus or Invictus style fragrances, again, of which there are many, you don't need this one. You're better off with just the original or Azzaro Wanted, so go with one of those. Up next is this one, Armani Code Absolute Gold. It's redundant. I don't think you need to own it. You're better off just going with Absolu or Code Profumo or Code Ultimate, because all of those fragrances have a very familiar DNA. When you spray them on, you're gonna pick it up immediately. Now, of course, they're all Code fragrances, so that makes sense, right? But still yet, there are so many fragrances that have similarities to Code Absolute Gold, I don't think you really need to own it. Now, that being said, I do like it. I think it's a nice fragrance, like the way it smells a lot, though I do prefer this one right here. So this one has tonka, iris, saffron, and mandarin orange. When you look at the note breakdown between this one and Absolu, they are different, which you would expect, but the fragrances themselves are still similar enough that I don't think it warrants a purchase. I mean, Absolu is pretty close to Profumo. I still think Absolu is better than Profumo. Again, I've said this a million times, but it's just a little bit more refined. It feels like it's put together a little bit better. I overall like the fragrance more, but Absolute Gold just doesn't do enough different for me. Now, if you're like me and you're a fan of the line, go ahead and pick it up because you're probably not going to be disappointed, but don't pick this up and expect a big difference from this because there's not one. Okay, next up is 3 fragrances, and this one is a little bit different because all 3 of these fragrances are similar enough that if you own one of them, you probably don't need the other 2. So those 3 fragrances are Cartier Declaration, Narciso Rodriguez Bleu Noir, and 1920 The Origin. These 3 fragrances all do a very similar thing, and if you own one of these, you probably don't need the other 2 unless you just really love this type of fragrance and just want kind of variations, small variations on the same idea. Now, as far as which one came first, it was this one. This one was released in 1998, and then this one in 2015, and then this one in 2017. So if you're after just the more original of this trio, gonna be the Cartier. If you're after the most affordable one, gonna be this one, the Origin. So this one right here has cedar, tea, cumin, and cardamom. Has some of the notes in the fragrance, and actually that cardamom is going to be one of the main things that ties these fragrances in together. This one has musk, vetiver, cedar, and cardamom, just as the last fragrance did. And then this one has bitter orange, birch, caraway, and cardamom, that's right. As I mentioned, there are going to be some slight variations between these fragrances. This one, for example, has tea, Bleu Noir, a little more concentration on like a musky, woody, spicy type of scent. And then Declaration going to be the one of the bunch that does smell maybe the most gentlemanly, or if you want to say it, the most old school. All 3 are very good fragrances. If I could pick just one, be a toss-up between the Cartier and the Narciso Rodriguez, probably would go for the Narciso, but it's really close. Anyways, all 3 of these pretty similar. You don't need all 3 unless, again, you just really like one of these fragrances and you want different flavors. Okay, next up, a couple of more old school fragrances, and I'm gonna follow that up with some summer staples. First up, the old school ones. Dior Eau Sauvage Eau de Toilette and Armani Eau pour Homme. Similar to what we just talked about, these fragrances do a really similar thing, just in slightly different styles. This one, Eau Sauvage, is older. This came out in 1966, whereas the Armani came out in '84. And this is more of an old school bottle that I have right here. I mean, look at that. Yeah. Now these fragrances share a bunch of notes. You can pull them up side by side on Fragrantica or something like that and contrast and compare, but there's a lot of shared notes here, and this is one of those times where shared notes do result in a fragrance that smells similar. So this has lemon, bergamot, basil, oak moss, and vetiver as some of the notes in the fragrance. And then guess what? This also has lemon, bergamot, oak moss, basil, and vetiver as some of the notes in the fragrance. Now, interestingly enough, to me, Eau Sauvage, even though it's the older fragrance, actually smells like a more modern fragrance than Armani Eau pour Homme does. Now, this is a solid scent, for sure. It's got that gentlemanly, masculine vibe to it. It's an easily worn business fragrance to the office or formally, but guess what? So is Eau Sauvage. And to me as well, Eau Sauvage smells of a little bit higher quality than the Armani. Now, I do like this fragrance. I think it's really nice, but overall, I prefer Eau Sauvage. So between these two, I think this one is the one to get, though I know some of you out there are gonna love this one, and I do like it as well. It's just, I think this one a little bit better. And I also think if you have this, you don't really need this. So last up, this one, Dolce & Gabbana Light Blue Pour Homme. I don't think you really need this anymore. I think it's better to get this one, and I don't really think you need to own both. I think this one is good enough. Now this one has grapefruit, pepper, bergamot, and mandarin. This is one of the modern classic kind of aquatic fragrances for men, but in my opinion, it has started to show its age. It smells a little bit dated compared to what most people are wearing nowadays. This one has grapefruit, juniper, mandarin orange, and sea notes. It is a bit saltier than Light Blue Pour Homme, but overall is going to be the more modern smelling fragrance that more people in general are going to want to wear. Now, if you have kind of a nostalgic attachment to this fragrance, I get it, because I have that with Aqua de Jo, among a few other fragrances like Drakkar Noir, which is awesome. But if you don't have this fragrance and you have this one, you don't need to buy this one. And if you're thinking about buying one of these fragrances, I would just go with this one and don't bother with this one. This does pretty much everything that this one does, just better. It's just one of those things, like with the new Aqua de Jo flankers, for example, where they're taking an existing DNA, which has been loved for a long time, and just updating it. And it is better, in my opinion. I'd rather wear this one. So there we go. Light Blue Eau Intense, in my opinion. Just go for this one. All right, guys, there we go. 5 redundant fragrances you don't need to own. Kind of 5. I know I kind of messed with the rules there, but it's my video, so I can do what I want. Thanks for hanging out with me today. Stay safe out there. Make sure to keep sending me those recommendations to my email, and I'll try to work through them. Thanks, guys. Stay safe out there.